he has dismissed Malusi Gigaba's attempt not to have his estranged wife evidence heard in public. I'm going to run through the arguments for and against. Completely fascinating. We do have 10 minutes, so let me just tell you a little bit more about how this went down. And this was an immediate decision made by the Deputy Chief Justice after listening to both sides of this argument. Of course, as you know, the former minister, Malusi Gigaba, does not want his estranged wife's evidence presented at this commission. Initially, Norma Mngoma signalled that she was quite happy to go to the commission. In recent weeks, she said she doesn't want to. So, let me run through what Richard Solomon, acting for Malusi Gigaba, said in terms of their argument, and also a letter that Norma Mngoma had given to the Commission earlier today, which Deputy Chief Justice Zondo had not had a chance to fully read. But basically, the arguments against her evidence is first, the issue of marital privilege. Now, my limited understanding of marital privilege is it relates to a criminal court, and if you don't want to testify against your spouse, you should not be forced to. So that was the main thrust of their argument, that she would be dealing with facts she doesn't have personal knowledge of, that her affidavit, her original affidavit, might not be accurate. Now, this speaks to possible acrimony due to the fact they're going through a very public and a very ugly breakup. There were also security concerns mentioned, and concerns about public disclosure and the children. The cross-examination issue, which is, of course, Malusi Gigaba's team wanting to cross-examine Norma Mngoma, they're actually going to deal with that separately. All right, so the main thrust of Malusi Gigaba's argument is that they're married, they're going through a divorce, and that a lot of the discussions were had in sort of the privilege of the marriage. In other words, it shouldn't be aired in public. There's an issue of divorce acrimony, as I mentioned, that there's a risk that because these two are in conflict in terms of their relationship, that the Commission could be used by Norma Mngoma to say awful things about her estranged husband, basically, that it sets a dangerous precedent. And then the other issue is that there are minor children involved, that they need to be protected, and this is where Solomon's acting for Malusi said that they potentially implicated in that they're woven into the story of this couple and how they've lived their lives together. So Zondo's response to the marital privilege issue, he says, I'm not a criminal court. Solomon says, no, that's true, but essentially saying that law shouldn't interfere with spousal confidentiality. It's suggesting really that even though this is a different legal setting to a criminal court, the principle of spousal privilege should still apply. So it's a principle of how the law is a hands-off approach to marriage. The other issue that Solomon raised was, if you want this Norma Mngoma's evidence to go ahead, at least keep it in camera behind closed doors. And the major issue is that it's intimate and personal evidence. It involves the children. It's going to have a major impact on the divorce proceedings. It's going to throw the children's lives out for the public glare. So he made the difference, Zondo, Deputy Chief Justice, saying that in camera at the Commission normally relates to the evidence being heard, but the person's identity being concealed. And so he was saying this is a very different thing that is being asked. I want to move to what Anton Myburg, the evidence leader, has said in response. And he said that if indeed Norma Mngoma is using the Commission to further her divorce argument, that's to be determined. Until you hear it, you can't be sure. He also said that he disputes that her evidence is of little value, and this was critical. I mean, we didn't get to hear it, but they mentioned paragraph 28.3.6 Deputy Chief Justice looked down and said yes. He said, you can't say it's irrelevant. It's absolutely pivotal to what this commission is about. And we're not interested in the private details. We just want the information that relates to possible state capture and corruption. So the other point that Deputy Chief Justice made is it doesn't help Malusi Gigaba's case that he was already a public figure. And the argument from Myburgh, speaking as evidence leader and speaking as from the Commission, that the in-camera principle basically goes against constitutional practice, that we should have access as the public to what goes on in court. So there was a lot of toing and froing, and I thought compelling, fascinating arguments coming from both sides. Solomon got a chance to argue again for his clients. And then Zondo, Deputy Chief Justice Zondo just proceeded to say, well, this is my decision. I've dismissed your application for her evidence not to be heard. And I've dismissed your application for it to be heard in camera.